This week has seen the launch of a powerful new feature film, the story of two mothers brought together by the tragedy of malaria. But behind this extraordinary film is an extraordinary real-life story.
Yeah, Harry, my son, he was 20. He was invited to travel through Africa in a big lorry, carrying school supplies, travelled all the way down through Africa to a place in Ghana called Brenu, where he was invited to help teach English to the students, to do some sport, to do some music. He was a very good, talented musician. So he travelled through Africa, loved what he saw, loved the people. He found them to be incredibly dignified, and was very... and I suppose, at the risk of using a cliche, he found himself as he travelled through Africa, using music a lot, using sport a lot, and teaching English, and threw himself completely into village life surrounding this school, and they loved him there. And he then, and as I say, he'd been to the doctors, he'd got all his malaria tablets, and he'd convinced me in the contact he did have with me that he was taking these tablets. But it turns out that he hadn't taken tablets. He had decided to give them away to children, to some of the girls there, to help them. Because in Ghana, in Africa, people have malaria a lot. They don't have preventative medication. And our medication helped people that were having bouts of malaria. And so he took it upon himself to give away his tablets, rather foolishly for him, because he just felt that he was strong, and he was young and strong, and he didn't need them. Misconception, obviously, but that's how he thought. And he remained healthy while he was in Africa, and he was healthy when he came home as well. But then he started to have symptoms of malaria about a week after he came home, and sort of 10 days after his first symptom, he, after a long battle, he succumbed to malaria. And what had happened is it attacked the parasite causes side effects. So the side effects in Harry's case was it completely destroyed his lungs. So that's what killed him in the end. They got rid of the parasites in his blood, but the damage to his young lungs was so great that he just couldn't survive.
What was your reaction and the reaction of the family to this tragedy?
Well, it's obviously devastating when you lose anybody, and it's devastating when you lose a child. And I have to say that I've lost many people, and one of them's my sister, and obviously grandparents and everything. But there's nothing quite like losing a child, and it just tears a hole in you that you can never ever fill up.
So at that time, was that already encouraging you to take an interest in the campaign, the malaria campaign?
Right, so this all started off with our local paper. They picked up the story. The family name's quite a Leighton Buzzard family name. This snowballed into getting into helping with the travel health, that snowballed into Malaria No More picking up my story and inviting me to join them. And I quickly realised that it was very therapeutic for me. And I have to say, possibly, very, very originally, it was for selfish reasons that I took these things on, because I found myself in situations where I was always talking about my child. Now, any parent likes talking about their child, but I was at liberty to talk about them. People were not allowed to glaze over. They had to listen to me. And as I say, it was very therapeutic for me. So I started doing stuff for the Malaria No More, and I was there at the inception of Malaria No More, and I went to meet. I did a few articles in the paper, and on the launch of it, we went to visit Gordon Brown, and we also, Malaria No More took me to Africa to see where Harry had been. So we did a documentary for the BBC, and going back there for 5 days to visit where Harry had been was the most enlightening thing I've ever done. I went there to find people had completely taken Harry into their hearts. They absolutely loved him. They felt he was a hero. And, I travelled several thousand miles to find people who loved Harry nearly as much as I did. And so, but then it very quickly, I felt that actually I could perhaps do some good here. Lots of people wanted to listen to me, and maybe I could make a difference. And by making a difference means that Harry's memory would forever live on, way beyond his family and friends. And for me personally, that's all I wanted. I wanted the world to hear about Harry. And on the back of that, it meant that I could do some good as well. And I knew that Harry would like that, because what he wanted to do was go back to Ghana to do a lot more work. And so I knew how much he would love me doing it. And that's what spurred me on.
And then Richard Curtis got to hear about it, and suddenly a film is being made, a feature film.
Well, I did know that Richard had the idea of a film way back in the beginning. But I knew that this film was about an American woman. And now, as I understand it, he had this outline of a script. I don't quite know how filmmakers work. But as I understand, he rewrote the film to include a British woman so that he could use inspiration. And yes, and now I find myself this week being the centre of attention as the inspiration for a film written by Richard Curtis, of all people, played by Brenda Blethyn, and it all seems a bit I don't know, it's a bit like destiny, because I love Richard's work, I love Brenda Blethyn's work, and it even points the director of the film, that is, he directed Rabbit Prairie Fence, and that's also in one of my top films. So it's rather surreal this week, to be honest.
What did you think when you saw it?
Well, I first watched it on my own, but I had to watch it if you like episodes. I had to keep switching it off and watch little bits. But on Tuesday, I went to a film showing with which Emma, Richard's partner, had organised, with loads of just wonderful, wonderful women. And I watched the whole thing through for the first time, and it was amazing. I mean, and what I found amazing, just the whole film was lovely. I loved the film, a standalone film, but Richard had really taken a lot of things about me. there's a scene where it's either Ben or Brenda arrive at the orphanage, and they had this sort of this party that were greeting them. That happened to me when I went back to Ghana to meet the children at Harry's school. The going towards American Congress, I did lobby our government. So it probably mirrored me rather a lot more than I actually expected.
Did you enjoy discussing it with Brenda?
I loved discussing it with Brenda, and what was wonderful about discussing it with Brenda is we were very similar. We laughed a lot about tragic things, because that's the way I deal with things, and she explained that's the way she dealt with things. But it's amazing to meet someone that's playing someone that's based on you. I mean, I've never been in that position before, obviously, but yes, discussing it with Brenda was wonderful, and I'm hoping that Brenda wants to help us more at Malaria No More, or help me fight this fight, really. But it was wonderful. It's amazing to be part of all this, and to have names that are really going to draw people's attention to the cause that is so close to my heart.
So when millions of people watch this tonight on BBC One, how would you like them to react? What do you think they could do in themselves when they think, how can I make a difference?
I want people to think on an individual scale, and think, rather than think this will take billions of pounds to do anything with. I want people to think, what can I do personally that I can afford? And basically, if every person who watches tonight donates, say, £5, that will cover a family of 4 with a bed net. If they can only afford £1, that will actually pay for the treatment for one person. If they can afford 80p, it will pay for a testing kit to tell whether people have got malaria. So if every person just donated the 80p, we would have saved more lives. If they could donate £7.80, we're probably saying that they could save 5 to 6 lives. And just keep it small in their mind. Keep it small. How how much a small amount can be of so much help, and how many people's lives they could save. That's how I want to think of them. And I want to think of them thinking, do you know what, this is what I'm going to do today. This is my good deed for the day. And it will make an enormous difference.